So the key here is to use bacterially derived antimicrobials. We want to view gut dysbiosis and SIBO as chronic gut infections, not as imbalances. We want to use, therefore, an antimicrobial to target this chronic microbial infection, but we want to use bacterially derived antimicrobials, which I'll explain later. 3, we want to use this for a short period of time at a very high intensity, not indefinitely. And 4, once we've finished, we want beneficial microbes in your gut to expand and fill the gaps left behind by the evicted and eradicated problematic microbes that were making up the infection which was causing your dysbiosis or SIBO. So just a quick note first, if you are in very, very good health, then Elixa is not for you. If you want to just add another supplement to your list, then that's not what Elixa is designed for. Elixa is designed for people with very real gut problems, problems that manifest in the gut itself or manifest outside of the gut, for example, on your mood, on your energy, on your skin, and so on. If that's you, then that is what Elixa is formulated for. So the problem of gut dysbiosis and SIBO is usually framed as follows. A gut problem or gut dysbiosis is referred to as an imbalance, which is quite vague sounding. They might say that you're missing certain species from your gut. With SIBO, people refer to it as an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, which is correct. But if those bacteria were in the colon, it would be totally fine. But they've somehow gotten into the small intestine and overgrown, and now it's a problem. But what I want you to do is to view all of this as a chronic infection. In other words, the presence of problematic microbes infecting your intestine. These bad microbes I've referred to, how do they cause this problem? They do it via 3 main mechanisms. Firstly, they cause inflammation. This is a microbe, in many cases a bacteria, that is not supposed to be there. The immune system responds. This is inflammation. And if this infection is chronic and therefore this inflammatory response is chronic, this causes problems. So chronic inflammation will cause problems. The second mechanism is that these bacteria and yeast and archaea will produce problematic chemicals in your gut. They will produce ammonia, acetaldehyde, byproducts of organosulfur metabolism, and these can get into the liver, these can get into the brain, these can get to other tissues, and they will cause problems in quite a direct, simple, chemical way. Now, the third way, you may have heard of celiac disease, possibly heard of tropical sprue. These are good models to demonstrate the third mechanism, which is that the presence of these microbes, which, as I've said, cause inflammation throughout the body, also cause inflammation in the lining of the intestine. And when this is the case, the absorptive surface of the intestinal brush border, the lining, especially of the small intestine, will change in a way that reduces its capacity to absorb things from what you eat. This can affect substantially the absorption of certain important micronutrients, for example, vitamin B12. As you can imagine, if you have a deficiency in micronutrients which you need to acquire from the diet, then this is going to manifest as problems throughout the body. So what would be required to solve this? Well, we've said that we're going to view this as a chronic infection of the gut, a microbial infection, okay? Which means, stands to reason that we would therefore want to use antimicrobials. But here's the thing. Everyone knows that simply taking an antibiotic, which is an antimicrobial specific to bacteria, or herbal antimicrobials, isn't eradicating gut dysbiosis. So what we want is something that's highly selective against the problematic microbes, and also is just highly effective, can affect bacteria which are in biofilm communities, for example, can also adapt to the environment and produce things specific to the problem in the local environment in the gut. This is where bacterially derived antimicrobials come in. So bacterially derived antimicrobials are simply antimicrobial substances, but also antimicrobial activity that derives from bacteria. and in this case, beneficial probiotic bacteria, in particular, Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium. So how do they exert this targeted antimicrobial action? Well, there's two ways. They produce chemicals that will target other bacteria, fungi, and archaea in the gut. These can be very simple chemicals, hydrogen peroxide, or they can be more complex molecules, even molecules which target biofilm. The second mechanism is that just like any species entering an ecosystem, because the gut is an ecosystem, they will compete against the residents, and in this case, the bad residents you don't want to be there, for the resources in the ecosystem, such as nutrients, carbon sources, nitrogen sources, iron, and so on. Or to put it simply, carbohydrate or the fuel for energy and the amino acids are the building blocks for division, and then other micronutrients that are needed that are there in the ecosystem and are being used by the problematic microbes. When you consume a very high dose of beneficial probiotics of specific strains, they will outcompete those problematic microbes for resources, starving them out and killing them off, basically. But of course, this can't be achieved via a conventional probiotic, which is essentially the whole point of my research and development in developing Elixa. The three things that are key are as follows. Firstly, you need to select the exact strains which produce the exact chemicals that target the problematic microbes in gut dysbiosis and SIBO. This is a science, not an art. It's a science insofar as you can assay all the genetic material in a bacterium and you can establish what it produces, what enzymes it produces, what chemicals it produces. The second thing you need is you must have a much higher concentration of bacteria than in a conventional probiotic. Not 50% more or double or triple or even 10 times as much, but you actually need 50 times as much. So a dose of Elixa is 50 times the CFU count of a normal conventional probiotic dose. The third important thing is that you must protect the bacteria from stomach acid. Now, there are other attempts to do this, but these are usually using capsules which disintegrate after a certain amount of time, and time is being used as a proxy for positioning the gut. But what you really want to bypass stomach acid is something that does not disintegrate in an acidic environment and then will disintegrate and disperse when it leaves the acidic environment. And this is one of the main aspects of industrial know-how or proprietary know-how that goes into Elixa. The effect of stomach acid, low pH, on probiotic bacteria can be extreme. In the case of bifidobacteria, for example, they can undergo 10x or 100x reduction being exposed to low pH, such as found in the stomach, after just a few minutes. So we're not talking about maybe losing half of them. We're talking about reducing them by 90% or 99%. So for every 100 bacterial cells that were consumed, only 10 or 1 actually survive if you expose them to stomach acid. So what I did quite early on with Elixa is ensure that the capsule did not disintegrate in an acidic environment and then disintegrated and dispersed when it left that acidic environment. And you can actually test this out yourself if you want by using vinegar and water and putting a capsule in each one and seeing how it will retain its integrity in the acidic liquid. And after some time passes, it will disintegrate and disperse in the neutral pH water. So just to give you a basic idea of the timeline of effects, when you consume the dose, if you follow the guidelines that I give on the instruction leaflet, it will move on from the stomach within 90 minutes. It will move into the small intestine. It will disintegrate and disperse shortly thereafter. Bacteria do take some time to get going again. They have to rehydrate, reanimate their metabolic processes. They will be moving through the small intestine towards the colon. They will be exerting their effect once they are metabolically active. From the time you consume the dose, they will have covered the vast majority of your intestinal tract within the first 24 hours. This is not necessarily when you will start to feel effects, but this is certainly when changes are occurring in the gut within the first day, within the first 24 hours. Day 2, day 3, if you have a particularly severe dysbiosis, you may experience some slight change in bowel movement frequency. You may even experience die-off reaction if you have a particularly severe dysbiosis. But from day 4, day 5, day 6, those effects will settle out and the beneficial effects will be accruing. Some people with particularly severe dysbiosis may experience an even more pronounced improvement 1 or 2 days after the end of the course. So let's say you go for a 12-day course. After day 12, you wait for 1 or 2 days to pass, and then you will have attained an equilibrium, a new steady state, a new status quo in the gut, a stable ecosystem. And at that point, you will be able to assess what the benefits are that you've accrued. If you have any questions, you can email me through the contact form or ask a question in the comment section if there is a comment section below this video.